Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Felicity Pulman, author of the Jana Chronicles series. Felicity, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Are you ready to get started? Are you ready to get started?
I am indeed.
All right, question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I think the most important thing is to believe in yourself and believe in what you're writing. I think too many authors these days, they, might look at Harry Potter or, think magic's selling or vampires are selling. I'm going to write one of those sorts of books. I don't think that works because everybody else has the same idea. It's far more important to write the story that you really are passionate to tell, the story that keeps you awake at night, the story that you believe in, because if you don't believe in it, no one else will either. So, believe in yourself and believe in your story.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Finding someone who believes in you as much as you believe in yourself. It's a selling process. Once you've had the vision, once you've written it down, you then have to get out and sell it to someone. And, finding the right publisher for your baby, your work of art is difficult. As I say, if you believe in yourself, the chances are that enthusiasm will translate into any dealings you might have with publishers, hopefully. But of course, then the whole process becomes difficult in that, you have to make sure that the work is as good as it can possibly be, even before you send it in. Then there's the editing process, of course, designing, choosing covers and all of that kind of thing. And then you've got to get out into the world and promote your book. And for a lot of authors, this is difficult because we tend to be solitary creatures sitting alone in our garrets writing our bestsellers. And then the whole process of having to get out there, talk to people and all of that sort of thing it can be quite daunting. But then, of course, there is social media, but we might go into that later, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to transition really nicely into our next question. One thing I wanted to ask before we go into that is, did you go through a traditional publisher or did you publish the book yourself?
I have mostly gone through traditional publishers. I've been very fortunate in that I have found publishers who have shared my dreams and ambitions. I have self-published a couple of novels and am wondering about that again. Obviously when you self-publish, you take on all the responsibility, all the decisions, and that's quite daunting, I think, for a lot of people. I certainly found it quite daunting.
And that's going to transition perfectly into our next question, because as you know, marketing is always a big part of it, whether you're doing it yourself or you're having someone publish your book. There's always that marketing aspect. So please share a marketing strategy that you've used in your book launch that worked well.
Well, it depends, of course, whether you're having what I call a real book launch or an online book launch, and I've done both. When I was writing the Jana Chronicles, originally the Jana Mysteries, they've been retitled and repackaged. But originally the first book in the series was called Rosemary for Remembrance. So I had a big book launch at the Writers' Centre here in Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. And I gave out little pots of rosemary to everyone who attended. So that was a nice kind of lead-in for my book, Rosemary for Remembrance. My main character is a herbalist, a herbal healer. And that was a big learning curve for me, of course, when I was writing it, because I then had to come to terms with, a whole lot of healing and herbs and all of that sort of thing. But it was a nice sort of segue into the book I was writing. But I have also done online book launches. And that's great, of course. I've done them in conjunction with a good friend of mine, Serene Keneally, who writes the magical Into the Mist series. And she's the techno-savvy one. I'm not very good at that. So she has set up the the online thing where we launch our books, and that of course is fabulous, because then you're reaching a worldwide audience straight away, and that's worked really well too.
And what exact strategies did you use for your online launch?
Oh, well, we advertised it beforehand, of course, and promoted little snippets from the novels and little teasers, if you like. We've had giveaways, free books. In Serene's case, she has beautiful bits of jewelry to give away as prizes for little competitions. We've held competitions about our books so that people can, click in and as I say, win prizes, win free books, whatever.
And how did that work? So for someone that's has their first book coming out and they want to do this type of competition or giveaway, when you are giving away a prize, how does that work?
Well, the first thing you need, of course, is a website and a presence on social media. So we did it through Facebook, and Serene set up a special page for the launch. Which we then, as I say, publicised some weeks in advance. We will be here at such and such a time on such and such a day. Tune in, have a chat about the books, win some prizes, go in for our competitions, tell us what you think, that kind of thing.
That sounds like a very good strategy. You're actually one of the first guests that we've had that really have talked about utilizing different type of giveaways, especially when it's like an online launch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you mainly use Facebook to do this, correct?
Yes.
And what did you find was the outcome? Did you find that a lot of people did participate in this?
Yes. We were talking to people from all around the world. It was fabulous.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great strategy. I just want to take a little deeper dive with that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, because that definitely is a great way to promote your book, especially during the launch. Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
All my books are favourites while I'm writing them. As I say, I care very much about what I write, so I immerse myself very deeply, and that becomes my focus for a long time. I mean, for the Jana Chronicles, for example, they were 10 years in the writing, and saying goodbye to those characters was just awful. It was like losing members of a family. The question. I really did enjoy writing the Jana Chronicles. There's a story about a young woman who's she's alone in the world. Her life is in danger. She has no family. It's a medieval kingdom at war, because I love medieval time. So it was a lot of research, obviously, learning the history at the time, and herbal healing and so forth, as I said. So I really love that. But every book I write has some aspect of learning attached to it. I tend to write quite a lot of historical fiction, so you learn an awful lot about the period you're writing about when you're doing that, and that's always fun. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but...
Well, what about your favorite book outside of your own books? So books that you've read throughout your life. What would be your favorite book, and what would be the number one thing that you learned from that?
I grew up a very long time ago in a small town in Africa, in what is now Zimbabwe, actually, and there weren't that many books available at the time, but I loved Enid Blyton, and I think sometimes I'm still writing the magic, or rewriting, should we say, the magic faraway tree, in that very often my characters find themselves without identity, or abandoned somewhere, or needing to find their place in the world. So I think that's probably a hang-up from Enid Blyton. But look, I read widely. I love historical fiction. I write crime, so I read a lot of crime fiction. I like fantasy, so I read fantasy as well. A lot of authors have influenced me over the years. But basically, I think it always comes down to the characters in your story. So I love reading people's stories. Leanne Moriarty, for example, is a favourite of mine at the moment, and Maeve Binchy, because they write very much stories about people, their interactions, their emotions, and so forth. And I think ultimately, that's what makes a gripping story, is when you get involved in the lives of the characters you're reading about.
Absolutely. For our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
I was thinking about that now. Possibly it's imagination is more important than knowledge. Einstein said that. And going to another quote, the older I get, the less I realize I know. I'm always gobsmacked by how little I know about our world and about so much of it. But I think, well, at least I've got my imagination. I can make stuff up. I can enchant people with stories. And I think we all need stories in our lives. So I'm with Einstein on that. Imagination is more important than knowledge. But of course, you need to learn stuff too, and keep on learning through your life.
Yeah. That is a great quote. Well, Felicity, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Well, I have a website. I actually wrote it out. I don't know if you can see it. www.felicitypulman.com.au is my website. And I would love people to click in there, and there's contact details there. So please send me a message. And if I can answer any questions about writing, about books, any books or my books, I'd be very happy to hear from you.
Well, Felicity, thank you once again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.